Hello. Flindersworthy here at Lincoln Castle, collecting tales and stories, old and new from near and far. Now, the story I have for you today is a local tale, but it concerns a creature that has terrified mankind for hundreds of years. I speak of the werewolf. The werewolf is considered to be a creature of two skins, for by day it walks the land in human form, completely normal and ordinary. It might not even know that it is a werewolf. In fact, it will not discover it is until a remarkable transformation happens, normally by the light of a full moon. You suddenly find that hair is growing all over your body. Your snout starts to grow and grow and grow until you have row upon row of sharp teeth. Your ears spring up. You suddenly find that you are bent over and walking on all fours. You have a tail. And when you try to cry for help, instead you emit a howl like a wolf. Once upon a time, there was a young archaeologist who was seeking out signs of prehistoric life by digging at Dog Dyke on Langrick Fen, which lies on the road between Lincoln and Boston. He had been at his labours for some 2 hours when suddenly the blade of his spade struck something solid. When he looked, he discovered that he had found a bone. He dug more, until he had unearthed a great number of bones, which he very carefully took from the ground, placed into boxes, and then took home to place upon the kitchen table of his cottage so he could study them and clean them. Well, he set to cleaning the bones, and he found something quite remarkable. The skeleton was clearly that of a human being, but when he removed the layers of peat from the skull, strangely, it was not human. It was the skull of a great dog or a wolf. The young archaeologist couldn't understand it. He thought at first perhaps somebody was playing some sort of dreadful trick on him. But by now it was late in the evening and he was tired, so he decided that he would retire to bed. As the young man lay in his bed, he was suddenly aware of noises from outside. It sounded like somebody was moving around. So, very quietly, he tiptoed to the window and drew back the curtain. There, sure enough, when he looked, he could see a figure moving around. But it was not until the figure stepped forward that by the light of the full moon he observed that it was a giant of a man with the head of a wolf. The wolf's head tipped back and emitted a terrifying howl. Well, you can imagine the young man was in a panic. He ran from his bedroom into his kitchen and dived across the kitchen to the trapdoor to the cellar. Behind him he could hear the sound of glass shattering and wood being torn. Well, he managed to open the trapdoor just in time, threw himself into the cellar, bolted the door behind him, and then waited. Sure enough, he could hear something moving around inside the kitchen. Something that had claws. It padded around until suddenly he heard a scratching sound at the trap door, a scratching that turned into a rending and a tearing, and then again that terrible howl. Well, the young man was in such fear for his life that he fainted right away. When the young man woke, there was a ray of light coming through a hole in the trap door, and all he could hear was the sound of birds. It was morning. Very carefully he reached up and opened the trap door and then looked around. The kitchen was exactly as he had left it. There, on the kitchen table, was the skull and the bones he had found the day before. But when he went to his bedroom, a terrible sight greeted his eyes. The window had been smashed. Shards of glass lay everywhere, and the window frame had been torn apart by something with superhuman strength. The young man dressed himself. Then he went back to the kitchen. He picked up all the bones he had discovered, placed them into boxes. He transported them back to Dog Dyke, and he buried them all deep where he had found them. then he returned home. That night, the young man was terrified that he might have another visitation from this horrific creature. He waited in the kitchen near the trapdoor for safety's sake, but no creature came. By his swift action, the young fellow had saved his life. So, if you are walking on Langrick Fen and you are close to Dog Dyke and you look down and you see a bone, my advice to you is do not pick it up. For if you do and you take it home, then you too may well be afflicted by the curse of the werewolf of Langrick Fen. So that is my story for this Saturday. I'll hope you'll listen again next Saturday to my niece Perdita. Ta-ta!